Welcome to our journey through the timeless wisdom of the book of Proverbs. This is not just a collection of ancient sayings. It is a divine manual, carefully crafted to guide every decision, every step, and every challenge of life. Proverbs opens a window into the mind of God, offering principles that cut across centuries and remain as relevant today as when they were first spoken. In these teachings, we don't just find advice for daily living, we find a code for building a life of integrity, discernment, and purpose. They show us how to handle relationships, finances, emotions, and challenges in ways that align with eternal truth. To ignore them is to walk blindly. To embrace them is to build on a foundation that cannot be shaken. This book speaks in the language of life. It reaches the heart as much as the mind, calling us to reflect, to change, and to rise above the ordinary. Each proverb is a spark of divine wisdom, a torch that lights the path of those who truly seek understanding. As you engage with these lessons, prepare your heart for transformation. They are not random words, they are strategies of heaven, hidden in plain sight. Wisdom is not for a select few. It cries out in the streets, inviting everyone who is willing to listen. In this video, we will uncover 20 powerful lessons from Proverbs, principles that have the power to reshape your thinking, your relationships, and your destiny. Each lesson is a doorway, and when you step through, you will see life with greater clarity and purpose. Stay with us until the end, because the last lesson ties everything together, revealing the secret to living a life that truly matters. These insights are not just meant to be heard, they are meant to be lived, practiced, and passed on. So let's dive in. Open your heart, open your mind, and let the wisdom of Proverbs guide you toward a new level of life, where peace, understanding, and strength become your daily companions. Before we continue, if you like our videos and feel that they have blessed your life, like and comment, even if it's just an amen. This makes a huge difference in getting this content to more people and impacting lives. If you are not subscribed yet, take the opportunity to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share with your loved ones. This way, YouTube will get to know you better and suggest even more videos like this to help you on your faith journey. Help to disseminate this message of faith and hope. Each like, comment, and share strengthens this work, which we do with great care to edify your life. Together we can reach even more hearts. Continuing. The first lesson from Proverbs 13:7 invites us to reflect on what it truly means to be rich. Many people spend their energy trying to sustain an image of prosperity that deep down does not exist. They may appear to live luxurious lives, but in reality they are emotionally empty, financially burdened with debt, and spiritually insecure. This type of wealth is nothing more than a disguise, something superficial that may impress the eyes but cannot sustain the heart. The biblical text warns us about the danger of living for appearances, inner emptiness. On the other hand, Solomon reveals that there are those who seem to have little, yet possess immeasurable riches. These are people who don't need to prove anything to anyone. Their lives may be simple, but they are full of purpose, wisdom, and integrity. They do not measure their value by the clothes they wear, the car they drive, or the house they live in, but by the character they demonstrate daily. This is silent wealth, discreet yet deeply powerful, because it depends not on circumstances, but on inner values. True wealth, therefore, is not found in what we display, but in who we are. It lies in a refined character, in the wisdom we acquire, and in the peace of mind we carry. This kind of treasure cannot be stolen by financial crises, lost with the passing of seasons, or measured by numbers. It is permanent because it is built into who we become. This wealth follows us into every area of life, spiritual, emotional, relational, and even professional. This lesson also warns us against the temptation to judge others by appearances. We often assume that someone is successful just by what we see on the outside. Yet when we look closer, we discover that person may struggle with insecurity, loneliness, and emptiness. At the same time, we sometimes overlook those who live simply, without prestige or wealth, but who carry a peace and wisdom capable of enlightening the lives of many. It is crucial to understand that appearances deceive, but character does not. Who we truly are will always find a way to reveal itself, whether in how we treat others or how we face crises. Luxury may collapse in an instant, but integrity remains firm, even in the storm. That is why the great lesson here is to invest. Less in what dazzles the eyes and more in what strengthens the soul. That is what makes us truly rich. This perspective calls us to a sincere self-examination. Are we living to sustain an image or to build an essence? Are we concerned with looking prosperous or with being people of true worth? There is nothing wrong with financial prosperity, but there is something deeply wrong when it becomes only a facade, without a foundation in character and wisdom. Proverbs reminds us to realign our hearts to pursue what carries eternal value, not just the temporary. At the end of the day, true wealth is not what we show, but what we carry within us. It may be wisdom, peace, healthy relationships, faith, or integrity. These are the true coins that enrich life. Whoever learns this lesson begins to live with greater freedom because they no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Inner peace becomes their greatest treasure, and that is where life gains its meaning. For instead of living to impress, we begin to live to transform. Proverbs 12:26 reveals something that may seem simple, yet carries immense weight. Friendships shape who we are and determine where we are going. The righteous man is cautious in his relationships because he understands that every person around him exerts influence on his steps. But the wicked, the text says, stumble precisely because they lack discernment in choosing their companions. This lesson is a clear warning. No one walks through life alone. We are either built up by our companions or dragged into paths of destruction. Friendship is never just companionship, it is influence. The people who walk beside us inevitably leave marks on how we think, feel, and act. If we walk with those who sow wisdom, we naturally grow in understanding. But if we surround ourselves with those who sow foolishness, we end up reaping bitter fruit. The righteous pray, observe, evaluate, and choose carefully. They understand that friendship is not something superficial, but rather a silent covenant that can shape destinies. Solomon is not saying we should live in isolation or walk around judging everyone, but that we must be intentional about who we allow to influence our hearts. Too often, we are guided by sympathy, short-term interests, or even the fear of loneliness. Yet true friendship is not about quantity. It is about quality. It is far better to walk with a few who build us up than with many who tear us down. Here, we see the contrast clearly. The wicked pay no attention to their companions. They join anyone, follow any advice, chase any direction, and in the end they get lost. This shows that a lack of vigilance in relationships comes at a high cost. A wrong friendship can lead us into addictions, poor decisions, emotional confusion, and even spiritual ruin. It is no wonder Paul later reinforced, "Bad company corrupts good character." When we understand this truth, we begin to value friendships as life investments. Every friend is a seed planted in our inner garden. Some seeds blossom into fruits of joy, support, and wisdom, but others, if not chosen wisely, can grow into weeds that choke out the best in us. The invitation of Proverbs is clear. Be selective. Choose wisely, because what you reap tomorrow comes from the friendships you sow today. Life is made of connections, and these connections are doors. Some doors lead us to extraordinary places, while others drag us into abysses. That is why the righteous do not choose friendships just for temporary pleasure, but for the eternal impact they will have. This does not mean cutting ourselves off from everyone, but understanding who truly deserves a place of intimacy in our hearts. The more discernment we use, the more protected we are from falling into subtle traps. Finally, the great counsel here is this: guard your friendships, for they directly influence your future. Choose to walk with those who add value, who draw you closer to God, who inspire you to grow and evolve. And likewise, be that kind of friend, someone who builds, who leaves a positive mark, and who adds value to the lives of those walking with you. Friendships are not just gifts of the present, they are seeds of the future. Proverbs 13:12 brings us one of the deepest truths about the human heart. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. Here lies a mystery of the soul. Human beings need hope in order to live. They need to believe that something better is coming. When hope is delayed too long, when waiting feels endless, the soul grows weary, the heart becomes heavy, and faith seems to weaken. We have all faced seasons of waiting, whether for a career breakthrough, a healing, a relationship, or a life change. The waiting can feel painful. Each day without fulfillment feels like a small part of us fades. The soul grows tired of waiting, and the heart feels sick with deferred hope. This is the reality Solomon describes. The weight of waiting presses heavily on the human spirit, but the verse also reveals the other side. When desire is fulfilled, when what we longed for finally arrives, it becomes a tree of life. The joy is so intense that it revives the soul, strengthens emotions, and renews our will to live. The heart that was once weary now blossoms with new life. This is the reward of waiting, the sweet taste of fulfillment that heals and restores. The wounds caused by delay. This truth teaches us something essential. Waiting is part of the growth process. It is not only about receiving what we desire, but about who we become while waiting. Waiting shapes patience, resilience, faith, and trust in God. And when fulfillment finally comes, it not only satisfies the longing, but also reveals how much we have grown through the process. There is always danger in giving up too soon. Many abandon their dreams because they grow weary of waiting. And in doing so, they lose the chance to experience the joy of fulfillment. A heart sick with delay needs treatment, and that treatment is renewed hope. That is why faith is essential. It sustains us in the in-betweens of life, keeping us firm while the promise has yet to arrive. Faith keeps the flame alive when hope seems to fade. The lesson of Proverbs here is twofold. First, acknowledge that waiting can be painful, but do not let it destroy your faith. Second, understand that fulfillment, when it comes, brings healing and restoration that outweigh the pain of delay. Life moves in cycles, seasons of waiting and seasons of harvest. And when the harvest arrives, it is abundant, not just with fruit, but with the transformation produced in us through waiting. Therefore, never despise the waiting season. It may feel long, but it is in that season that God shapes character and strengthens the soul. And when fulfillment finally comes, it will be like a tree of life planted within your heart, producing fruit of joy, gratitude, and completeness. The secret is this: never lose hope, because the God who promised is faithful to fulfill. The heart may grow sick in delay, but it blooms with life when the longing is fulfilled. Not everything the eyes see reflects the truth of the heart. Proverbs 14:13 declares, "Even in laughter the heart may ache, and rejoicing may end in grief." This is a powerful revelation about human nature. Outward appearance does not always reveal inner reality. How many times do we see people laughing in public but crying in private? Laughter, no matter how bright it seems, can often be just a mask hiding unhealed wounds. This lesson invites us to look beyond superficial expressions. We live in a society that glorifies the image of happiness and success, which causes many to hide their pain behind a smile. Yet the biblical text warns us about the fragility of such appearances, reminding us that laughter may be temporary while sorrow remains deeply rooted within. It is a call for us to exercise empathy and discernment. In our relationships, the contrast here is profound, laughter and sadness coexisting within the same heart. This shows us that emotions are not linear or simple. Life is layered, and external joy does not always erase internal pain. We must learn to understand this reality, both in ourselves and in others. It is possible to laugh so we don't cry, to smile to disguise pain, but it is impossible to hide from the soul the weight of unresolved sorrow. When we grasp this truth, we learn not to judge too quickly another person's apparent happiness. Someone who seems to be doing well may in fact be fighting silent battles. That is why the wisdom of Proverbs teaches us to be more compassionate, to listen deeply, and to care for those around us. A smile is not always a sign of peace, just as silence is not always a sign of weakness. This verse also speaks directly to our own hearts. How often do we try to mask our struggles, even from ourselves? The danger is that by hiding, we create a gap between who we truly are and who we pretend to be. Laughter may deceive others, but it does not heal wounds. True healing comes only when we have the courage to face our pain, bring it to the light, and seek restoration in God. The wisdom of this proverb points us to an essential truth. True well-being is not born from external appearances, but from internal healing. It is not forced laughter that brings peace, but emotional and spiritual wholeness flowing from the heart. In God's presence, we discover a joy that does not depend on circumstances, a joy that does not end in grief, because it is rooted in something eternal and unshakable. Therefore, Proverbs 14:13 calls us clearly, "Go beyond appearances. Do not settle for laughter that hides sadness, but seek the joy that flows from inner peace." Learn to look at people with compassion, understanding that smiles may often be just facades. And above all, allow yourself to live with genuine joy, joy that springs from a healed soul and from God's presence dwelling within you. Then, laughter will no longer be a mask, but the true reflection of the life within. There are secrets in life that become keys to living better, and Proverbs 14:27 reveals one of them. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, turning a person from the snares of death. Here, Solomon is not speaking of a paralyzing fear, but of reverence, respect, and complete surrender to God. This healthy fear opens a safe path, protects us from traps, and leads us into true fullness. Those who honor God with their lives discover constant protection in His presence. The verse shows us that the fear of the Lord is not a prison, but a fountain of life. It is like a spring that never runs dry, pouring wisdom, discernment, and peace into those who seek God. This fountain not only strengthens us in times of hardship, but also keeps us from paths of destruction. When we honor God's principles, we avoid choices that would lead to ruin or failure. This protection does not mean the absence of problems, but guidance through them. The fear of the Lord gives us clarity to see dangers that, without Him, we would miss. How many have fallen into destruction because they lacked reverence and spiritual sensitivity? Proverbs makes it clear, those who fear God are better prepared for life because they walk under the wisdom of the Creator. It is important to note that this fear does more than protect. It produces abundant life. It pulls us away from the traps of death, which can be addictions, reckless choices, destructive relationships, or attitudes that corrupt the heart. Reverence for God keeps us on the path of balance, protecting us from the pitfalls that entangle so many. This is the difference between walking alone and walking guided by divine wisdom. When we cultivate the fear of the Lord, we develop within us a spiritual radar that warns us of hidden dangers. This radar is not born of human experience, but of God's wisdom. It helps us discern people, decisions, and opportunities, distinguishing between what is truly good and what merely looks good but leads to destruction. That is why Scripture calls the fear of the Lord a fountain of life. It connects us to the author of life himself. This principle also teaches us to live with purpose. Without the fear of the Lord, we risk chasing fleeting pleasures that later cost us dearly, but with it, we learn to say no to what destroys us and yes to what strengthens us. The result is a lighter, safer, and more purposeful life. This wisdom is not born of formulas, but of a heart willing to surrender to God's will. In the end, Proverbs 14:27 reminds us that true life is not just breathing, but living fully and securely. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of a safe journey. It guards us from evil and leads us to true freedom. In it, we find peace, discernment, and constant protection. Those who choose to live in reverence to God do not merely survive, they flourish, for they have discovered the inexhaustible fountain of abundant life. There are moments when a single good piece of news can completely change our day. Proverbs 15:30 declares, "The light of the eyes rejoices the heart, and good news refreshes the bones." This verse reveals how both what we see and what we hear have the power to deeply impact our emotional and even physical state. A kind word, a gesture of love, or a hopeful message can renew us from the inside out. The first part highlights that the light of the eyes rejoices the heart. This means that when our eyes behold something good, beautiful, or encouraging, our inner being is filled with joy. It could be something simple, like seeing the smile of someone we love, beholding a breathtaking view, or witnessing an unexpected act of kindness. These seemingly small moments ignite sparks that rekindle hope in our hearts. The second part teaches that good news refreshes the bones. The imagery is powerful. Positive words don't just cheer us up, they strengthen us, give us energy, and restore vitality. It is as if a word of encouragement had the power to heal a weary heart and lift someone who was downcast. This demonstrates that what we allow to enter our ears shapes our spirit and can even influence our physical health. This lesson is essential for us to understand the importance of cultivating healthy environments and edifying words. In a world overflowing with bad news, we must choose to be messengers of good news. A word spoken at the right time can change someone's day and even redirect their life. At the same time, we must be careful about what we consume, for it either nourishes or weakens our soul. The wisdom of Proverbs teaches us that joy is not merely a fleeting emotion, but a spiritual resource that strengthens our walk. True joy does not depend on circumstances. It springs from a clear vision and words filled with hope. It has the power to energize us to keep moving forward, even in difficulties, because it sustains our faith and reminds us that God is still in control. This also places a responsibility on us to be transmitters of good news. Our words and actions can either lift someone up or tear them down. When we choose to sow encouragement and hope, we transform others, and in doing so, we ourselves are strengthened. It is a life-giving cycle. The more light we share, the more our own hearts are filled with joy and vitality. In summary, Proverbs 15:30 teaches that joy is an inner strength fed by what we see and hear. When we fill our eyes and ears with good things, our hearts flourish and our lives are renewed. The lesson is clear. Carefully choose what you allow into your mind and commit to being a bearer of good news. The joy that flows from this choice not only inspires but strengthens, becoming the difference between a weary heart and one full of life. Few decisions are as transformative as the choice to trust fully in God. Proverbs 16:20 declares, "Whoever gives heed to instruction prospers, and blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord." This is a clear promise. True happiness does not come from external circumstances, but from deep trust in the one who sustains all things. The secret to a full life lies in listening to God's word and resting in his faithfulness. The verse begins with a powerful principle: whoever gives heed to instruction prospers. To give heed to the word is more than hearing superficially. It is paying attention, seeking understanding, and applying it in daily life. Those who live by divine wisdom find direction, avoid paths of pain, and discover true goodness. Not fleeting pleasure, but what endures forever. The second part of the verse reveals the essence of happiness: trusting in the Lord. This trust goes beyond belief. It is surrender. It means letting go of control and placing life fully in God's hands, knowing he is wise, just, and loving enough to guide every step. This surrender produces inner peace, as the person no longer lives anxious about tomorrow but rests in the certainty that God is in control. Trusting in God does not mean a life without struggles, but a life with the certainty of victory. Trust is tested in storms, when no way out seems visible. It is precisely then that faith reveals its power, standing firm even without understanding, believing that the Creator has already written the ending. Such trust brings happiness that cannot be shaken by circumstances because it is rooted in the conviction that God cares. This principle also teaches us that true happiness cannot be bought or fabricated. Many chase joy in wealth, relationships, or fleeting achievements. Yet, such happiness is fragile, dependent on external conditions. The happiness that comes from trusting in God is solid because it springs from within and remains even when everything else falls apart. Paying attention to God's word and trusting him are two sides of the same coin. The word reveals his will, and trust allows us to rest in his action. Together they create balance, wisdom to make decisions, and peace to wait for God's timing. It is like walking down uncertain roads with the assurance of having a reliable guide leading the way. Therefore, the lesson of Proverbs 16:20 is clear and practical. If you desire true happiness, set your eyes on God's word and your heart on him. This combination is infallible, producing a life of purpose, balance, and peace. It is not a promise of a problem-free life, but of unshakable joy. Joy sustained by trust in a God who never fails. That is the happiness not based on what we have, but on who we trust. There are choices in life that cost us dearly, and a lack of wisdom is one of them. Proverbs 17:12 says, "Better to meet a bear robbed of her cubs than a fool bent on folly." This striking comparison shows how dangerous it is to deal with a senseless person. An enraged bear represents immediate physical danger, but a fool in his recklessness can cause even greater destruction, ruining lives, relationships, and futures. The text makes us reflect on how foolishness affects not only the one who practices it, but everyone around them. A person who refuses to think, ignores counsel, and repeats the same mistakes spreads chaos wherever they go. It is like a wildfire. What begins with a spark soon consumes everything in its path. This is the seriousness of Solomon's warning. Imprudence is contagious and devastating. To act without wisdom is to live without considering consequences. It is to decide in haste, driven by anger or pride. Often, seemingly small, careless choices become great tragedies. The fool does not see this, for he is blinded by his own folly. What makes it worse is that he often believes he is right, which makes correction even harder. This proverb also teaches us to distance ourselves from foolish people. Walking alongside a fool is exposing ourselves to unnecessary risk. their imprudence may very well become our downfall. That is why biblical wisdom urges vigilance. Choose carefully the people you associate with and avoid joining projects or plans led by those who despise wisdom. The cost may be too high. Yet the lesson is not only about others, it is about us as well. How many times have we acted foolishly, stubbornly, insisting on wrong paths, ignoring advice, or repeating harmful patterns? This text calls us to self-examination. Are we living prudently or letting impulsiveness lead us? Recognizing our own folly is the first step toward cultivating wisdom. Wisdom is a shield against needless destruction. When we pause to reflect, seek counsel, and weigh consequences, we avoid unnecessary pain. The contrast is clear. While the fool multiplies problems, the wise person avoids traps and finds paths of peace. The difference lies in the choice to act with prudence rather than react with imprudence. In summary, Proverbs 17:12 warns us emphatically, foolishness can be more dangerous than facing a wild beast. The message is clear. Value wisdom, flee from folly, and do not bind yourself to those who insist on living without discernment. Life already carries enough challenges. We do not need to add the risks of recklessness. True protection is found in cultivating wisdom and seeking God's guidance in every decision. One of life's greatest traps is judging too quickly. Proverbs 18:17 warns us, "The first to plead his case seems right, until another comes and examines him." This simple statement carries profound wisdom. Every story has more than one side, and only by listening to both can we approach the truth. Believing the first version blindly is like walking on unstable ground. Sooner or later, the fall will come. Human beings naturally tend to believe the first voice they hear, especially when it speaks with confidence. Yet Scripture teaches that discernment requires patience and prudence. Before forming an opinion, we must listen, evaluate, and weigh carefully. Many injustices are born when people are satisfied with hearing only one version. The righteous, however, seek to understand the whole truth. This principle applies to every area of life: relationships, work, family, and even society. How many friendships have been broken, reputations destroyed, and wrong decisions made because someone refused to hear the other side? Solomon's wisdom protects us from such errors. The wise person is never hasty. They analyze, question, and only then draw conclusions. Listening to both sides also requires humility. It means recognizing that we do not hold absolute truth and that our first impression may be mistaken. This attitude not only prevents errors, but also strengthens relationships, as it communicates fairness and balance. People trust those who are impartial, who evaluate situations without rushing to condemn. That is the path of integrity. Moreover, this lesson reminds us that truth often does not lie at the extremes. Many times, it is found somewhere in between, where different perspectives meet and hidden nuances are revealed. The wise know how to balance listening, analyzing facts, rather than emotions. Acting this way keeps them from being manipulated by persuasive but empty words. This practice also reflects spiritual justice. God is just because He knows all versions, including the hidden intentions of the heart. If we want to reflect divine justice in our own attitudes, we must learn to listen before judging. It is not just about giving voice to both sides, but cultivating patience to discern correctly. That is a mark of maturity. In summary, Proverbs 18:17 calls us to be careful and fair in our judgments. Believing the first report too quickly is an enemy of truth. The invitation is clear: learn to listen to both sides, evaluate with wisdom, and only then form your judgment. This habit protects relationships, avoids injustice, and draws us closer to the character of God, who does not judge by appearances, but by truth. Few things reveal the human heart more clearly than the way people handle friendship and wealth. Proverbs 19:4 states, "Wealth brings many friends, but a poor man is deserted by his friend." This verse exposes a harsh reality. Friendship is often not driven by loyalty, but by interest. When there are possessions, influence, or status, many want to draw close. But when those things disappear, so do most of the so-called friends. This biblical warning teaches us to examine relationships with discernment. Anyone who approaches others only for what they can receive is not a true friend. Self-interest may create temporary bonds, but they never endure the test of time. When difficulties arise, false friends vanish, exposing that the bond was never rooted in love or loyalty, but in convenience. It is in hardship that the truth of friendship is revealed. The lesson is clear. Friendships of interest are fragile and dangerous. They give us the illusion of support and security, but they vanish precisely when we need them most. Why? Because they are not rooted in genuine values, but in passing benefits. The wise person learns to identify this pattern and refuses to be deceived by applause or presence that exists only in times of abundance. In contrast, there are true friends, those rare treasures who remain in every season. They do not step back when hardship comes. Instead, they draw closer when they see our vulnerability. These are priceless relationships, not defined by what we have, but by who we are. To find and cherish such friendships is to invest in something eternal. This proverb also invites us to self-reflection. Are we approaching others for what we can gain or for what we can give? True friendship is marked by generosity, sincerity, and the ability to walk together both in times of joy and in times of sorrow. When we understand this, we begin to build relationships that are authentic, deep, and lasting. The contrast between friendships of interest and true loyalty highlights the importance of discernment. We must learn to distinguish between those who only consume our energy and those who truly add value to our lives. Not everyone who walks with us has a heart aligned with faithfulness. Learning to separate one group from the other is a sign of maturity and protects us from future disappointment. In summary, Proverbs 19:4 reminds us that genuine friendship cannot be bought with wealth, but is proven in difficulty. Riches may attract crowds, but loyalty is found only in sincere hearts. That is why we must value those who stay when we have nothing to offer, for they are the true friends life gives us. At the same time, we must also choose to become that kind of friend. One who remains regardless of the circumstances. Few things seem so harmless and yet prove so destructive as gossip. Proverbs 18:8 declares, "The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts." This striking comparison reveals the seductive nature of gossip. It arouses curiosity, tastes sweet to the ears, but once swallowed, it seeps deep into the soul, poisoning relationships and corrupting the heart. The wisdom of this verse shows us that gossip does not remain on the surface. It enters the soul, shaping perceptions and altering the way we view others. Too often we accept a slander without verifying it, and this changes how we treat people, creating prejudice, distance, and injustice. Its effects can be devastating for both the target of gossip and the one who consumes it. It is no accident that Solomon compares gossip to choice morsels. The danger lies in the fleeting pleasure it produces. Those who listen to gossip feel a false sense of power, as if possessing exclusive knowledge. But that pleasure is deceptive, for the cost is high: broken trust, ruined friendships, and hearts filled with bitterness. The taste is sweet, but the aftertaste is poison. Another danger is that gossip never remains small. A single malicious word spreads like wildfire, multiplying rapidly. What begins as a whisper in secrecy soon turns into a storm of judgments and accusations. That is why the wise stay far from such conversations and do not let themselves be entangled in the fascination of malicious talk. Silence, in this case, is protection for the soul. This proverb also calls us to responsibility. It is not enough to avoid speaking ill of others. We must also refuse to feed our ears with poisoned words. To listen to gossip is to allow harmful seeds to be planted in the heart. Wisdom is in closing our ears to evil and opening them only to words that build and strengthen. The practice of gossip reveals a heart that has not yet learned the power of words. While the tongue of the wise heals and encourages, the tongue of the fool divides and destroys. That is the dividing line between those who walk in wisdom and those who embrace folly. Whoever desires peace must learn to avoid this evil, cultivating communication that is pure, honest, and restorative. In summary, Proverbs 18:8 teaches that gossip may taste sweet, but ends bitter. Its apparent delight hides poison that sickens relationships and corrupts lives. The lesson is clear: do not allow your mouth to spread slander, nor your ears to become a storage for venom. Instead, let your words be seeds of life and peace, and you will reap trust, joy, and healthy relationships in return. Among life's most precious virtues, few are as rare as true loyalty. Proverbs 26 declares, "Many claim to have unfailing love, but a faithful person who can find?" This question echoes through the ages as a timeless challenge. Many speak of loyalty, many boast of their faithfulness, but in practice, genuine fidelity is a treasure hard to find. Words are easy, but loyalty is proven only through consistent action. This proverb teaches that loyalty is not talk, it is consistency. A true friend is not the one who merely says they are present, but the one who stays, even when there is nothing to gain. Life shows us that in times of prosperity, many gather around, but in seasons of pain and scarcity, only the faithful remain. And it is precisely in those moments that we discover who truly walks with us. The rarity of loyalty exposes the fragility of human nature. It is easy to be a friend when life is full of celebrations, victories, and abundance. But fidelity is tested in adversity, when there are no rewards or applause. A true friend does not run from suffering. They become a refuge in the storm. This constancy is what separates superficial ties from eternal bonds. The contrast between promises and reality is striking. Many proclaim kindness and faithfulness because talk costs nothing, yet life is not built on speeches, but on actions. When circumstances change, the truth surfaces. That is why Proverbs teaches us to be discerning. Do not trust merely in words, but observe attitudes, for it is through them that faithfulness is revealed. This lesson also calls us to self-reflection. It is not enough to seek loyal friends. We must also choose to become that kind of person. Loyalty begins with us, honoring our commitments, staying present even when there is no personal gain, and valuing those who walk with us. This is the kind of character that builds strong friendships and lasting relationships. The rarity of loyalty makes it a treasure worth cherishing. When we find someone truly faithful, we must value, protect, and nurture that bond. It is like finding a precious stone among ordinary rocks. It demands gratitude, attention, and reciprocity. At the same time, when we choose to embody loyalty ourselves, we become a light in a world where falsehood and self-interest often prevail. In summary, Proverbs 26 reminds us that words are cheap, but faithfulness is rare. True friendship is proven not by speeches, but by constancy. The invitation is twofold. Recognize and honor the loyal friends God places in your life, and commit to becoming a faithful person yourself. For in the end, loyalty is the foundation on which enduring relationships and trustworthy character are built. Patience is not merely the ability to wait, but the capacity to maintain peace while waiting. Proverbs reveals that impatience opens doors to hasty and destructive decisions. The wise learn to slow down their emotions, weigh the consequences, and discern the right time to act. Impatience, on the other hand, blinds the mind and pushes people toward paths of regret. True wisdom is not rushing, but mastering the art of timing. The patient person builds bridges, while the impatient often burns them. How many families, friendships, and businesses have been lost simply because someone did not stop to breathe before responding? The wisdom of Proverbs shows us that those who cultivate patience win not only respect, but also stability. Impulsive choices bring immediate satisfaction, but often plant seeds of long-term pain. Patience is directly tied to trust in God. When you wait on His timing, you declare through your attitude that He is in control. Many times the delay is not punishment, but divine protection. By learning to wait, you avoid traps carefully set along the way. Patience is not passivity, but a shield against destruction. It is training the heart to trust the invisible rather than rushing after what looks urgent. Life is full of moments when everything seems to demand immediate action. However, rushing often leads us to trip over the very steps we are trying to climb. Proverbs teaches us that patience creates clarity. When the storm settles, decisions become clearer. Those who wait on God see what others miss. They avoid mistakes disguised as opportunities, and they find doors opening at the right time, in the right way. Patience also acts as a filter of maturity. Those who are impatient reveal a lack of internal structure to handle pressure. Those who are patient show that they are prepared for bigger responsibilities. God does not deliver treasures into the hands of those who do not know how to wait. Every great promise in Scripture passed through the door of patience before being fulfilled. It is in the waiting that character is forged. Patience is not weakness, it is strength under control. While the world values immediacy, God values perseverance. Learning to wait is an act of courage, for it goes against the culture of urgency that dominates our days. The impatient lose peace and health in pursuit of the immediate. The patient, however, gain the advantage of discernment. They do not settle for crumbs, for they know the banquet comes with time. Therefore, cultivating patience is not simply a moral lesson, but a survival strategy. It is protection against self-sabotage. It is proof that you are aligned with the rhythm of heaven. Whoever does not learn patience lives at the mercy of their impulses. But whoever embraces patience becomes unshakable, because they know that nothing can steal what God has reserved for the right time. Patience is not weakness. It is strength under control. Proverbs reminds us that those who are quick-tempered often fall into traps, while those who wait with wisdom see doors open at the right time. Patience is the bridge between a dream and its fulfillment, teaching us to trust God's timing rather than our own anxieties. A patient heart develops resilience because it understands that life is not about immediate rewards, but about eternal processes. Each delay can be a hidden preparation, and each apparent pause may be God building something greater behind the scenes. Impatience blinds, but patience clarifies the vision. When impatience dominates, it leads to rushed decisions, broken relationships, and missed opportunities. But when patience rules, peace reigns in the soul, and wisdom guides each step. This is the difference between building on sand and building on rock. Patience gives stability to life. Patience also reflects humility because it recognizes that not everything is under our control. By waiting, we declare that God is sovereign and that His timing is perfect. This act of surrender transforms waiting into worship. Moreover, patience refines character. Just as fire purifies gold, waiting shapes virtues such as self-control. Empathy and perseverance. A patient person becomes a safe place for others, transmitting security and trust. This virtue also teaches us to value small victories along the journey. Instead of despising the beginning of things, patience celebrates growth, knowing that every seed takes time to bear fruit. Gratitude increases when we embrace the process instead of rushing the result. Therefore, patience is not simply about waiting. It is about how we wait. It is waiting with hope, with faith, and with a heart ready to see God act at the right time. Those who practice patience gain peace, wisdom, and maturity that no rush can offer. Generosity is a seed that never returns empty. Proverbs teaches that those who give freely never lack, while those who hold back too tightly end up losing what they tried to protect. True abundance is not found in accumulation, but in the constant flow of sharing. A generous heart understands that wealth is a tool, not an idol. When we share, we multiply value not only in the lives of others, but also in our own. Giving breaks selfishness and opens the door for divine blessings to overflow. Generosity is not about the amount, but about the intention. Even the smallest gesture done with love can carry eternal significance. God values the attitude of the heart more than the magnitude of the gift. This makes generosity accessible to all. Those who practice generosity experience joy that money cannot buy. It is the joy of seeing lives transformed, needs met, and hope restored. It is a joy that surpasses possessions and touches eternity. Generosity also creates a spiritual cycle of return. As we sow into the lives of others, God provides in ways we cannot imagine. The generous are never abandoned, for their trust is in the one who owns all things. But generosity is not only about resources, it is also about time, attention, and compassion. Sharing a word of encouragement, offering a listening ear, or extending a helping hand can be as valuable as material aid. Therefore, the secret of a generous heart is living with open hands and a willing spirit. The more we give, the more space we create to receive, not only from people but from God Himself. Generosity transforms ordinary lives into channels of extraordinary blessings. Self-control is often misunderstood as a prison that limits desires, but in reality, it is the very path to freedom. The one who is ruled by impulses is never truly free, for they are enslaved by their own whims and emotions. Proverbs teaches that mastering oneself is greater than conquering an entire city. When you learn to say no to yourself, you open the door to say yes to greater opportunities. Self-control is not a burden, but a key to personal and spiritual independence. Think of those who give in to anger, greed, or lust. Are they really free? Or are they constantly pulled by invisible chains? Without self-control, one loses direction, dignity, and purpose. However, those who train their mind and heart in discipline gain strength to face temptations and storms without being shaken. Discipline builds a fortress within that protects against external attacks. The world sells the illusion that freedom means doing everything you want, whenever you want. Yet true wisdom reveals that this path only leads to slavery, to addictions, debts, and regrets. The wise man knows that freedom is not the absence of rules, but the ability to govern himself. Only the one who is free internally can experience true peace. The lack of self-control destroys relationships, careers, and even destinies. On the other hand, cultivating self-control allows for balance in decisions and peace in the soul. It does not mean repressing desires, but aligning them with higher purposes. It is the art of mastering impulses so that they serve you instead of ruling over you. This wisdom turns every battle into training for greater victories. And every small victory strengthens the muscles of discipline and character. Self-control also shapes words. Many wounds come from tongues that were not held back in time. A person who controls their speech can turn conflicts into peace and prevent relationships from being destroyed. Similarly, in finances, controlling impulses prevents ruin and builds prosperity over time. Small daily disciplines are the seed of a great harvest of stability. In a world where everything screams for immediacy, those who practice self-control rise above the crowd. They do not live enslaved by trends, but build their own path with consistency. Their no to the wrong things strengthens their yes to the right ones. It is not about perfection, but about direction. Each step of discipline takes you closer to becoming the person you were created to be. Therefore, Proverbs is clear. Self-control is greater than military victories because it is the conquest of the greatest territory, the human heart. Whoever governs themselves can govern nations, families, and businesses. But whoever loses themselves internally will see everything around them collapse. True freedom begins when you stop being a prisoner of your impulses and become master of your own choices. Words carry weight, and Proverbs warns us of the destructive power of gossip and slander. A rumor may seem small, but once released, it spreads like wildfire, damaging reputations and relationships beyond repair. Gossip is often disguised as concern or curiosity, yet its root is poison, eroding trust and planting seeds of discord where unity once flourished. The Bible reminds us that the tongue has the power of life and death. Proverbs 18:21. When gossip is entertained, it becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. Those who delight in spreading slander may feel powerful momentarily, but in truth, they are enslaved by pettiness, feeding on the misfortune of others rather than building anything of value. To avoid gossip, one must develop discernment. Not every piece of information deserves a voice, and not every conversation requires our participation. Silence, in this case, is wisdom. When we refuse to echo words of destruction, we position ourselves as people of integrity, guarding not only our own character, but also the dignity of those around us. Proverbs teaches us that a gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. Proverbs 11:13. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it rarely returns to its original strength. By refusing to participate in slander, we show others that we are worthy of their trust, creating a safe environment where relationships can flourish. Furthermore, gossip reveals more about the speaker than the subject. When we hear someone spreading slander, we must ask ourselves, if they speak this way about others, how might they speak about us in our absence? True wisdom is to stay away from such company, recognizing that proximity to gossip often draws us into its snare. On the other hand, words of encouragement have the power to heal. Instead of echoing negativity, we can choose to be voices of restoration. A timely word of kindness may mend a broken heart, restore hope, or protect someone from despair. In a world saturated with criticism, encouragement is a rare and priceless gift. Ultimately, to avoid gossip and slander is to align with the heart of God. He calls us to be peacemakers, not sowers of division. When we guard our tongues, we cultivate an atmosphere where truth, love, and trust can thrive. And in doing so, we reflect the wisdom of Proverbs, building relationships that withstand the test of time. Patience is not weakness. It is strength under control. Proverbs shows us that those who wait with perseverance, trusting in God's timing, reap rewards that no haste could ever achieve. To be patient is to recognize that God is never late, nor is he early, but always acts at the right moment. This is a reminder that rushing can often lead to mistakes, while waiting with wisdom opens doors to blessings that last. Life tests us with waiting periods, whether for a promise, a breakthrough, or a transformation. In these moments, patience is refined like gold in the fire. It teaches us to trust beyond what we see and to silence the anxiety of immediacy. Patience is not passive. It is active faith, holding firm in hope and resisting the temptation to give up too soon. Perseverance, on the other hand, is patience in action. It is not just waiting, but moving forward step by step, even when the road is long and tiring. The wisdom of Proverbs invites us to endure, to not faint in the face of adversity, because the end of perseverance is victory. Those who persist eventually see the harvest of what they sowed with faith and dedication. One of the greatest dangers of modern life is the obsession with immediate results. But Proverbs reminds us that what is built in haste often falls apart quickly. The character formed in patience sustains what perseverance achieves. To cultivate this virtue is to prepare the ground for stable and lasting success, both in spiritual and practical life. Patience also reshapes relationships. It helps us listen without interrupting, understand before judging, and love without rushing. It avoids conflicts and strengthens bonds, because it teaches us to value people more than moments. In a world where everything is instant, patience becomes a rare jewel that distinguishes the wise from the reckless. Spiritually, patience reflects God's nature, who is slow to anger and abounding in mercy. He endures our failures with long-suffering love, teaching us by example. When we cultivate patience and perseverance, we align ourselves with His heart, becoming channels of peace and endurance for those around us. Therefore, remember, patience is the bridge between the promise and its fulfillment. Perseverance is the path that sustains the journey until the end. Together, they shape strong, resilient, and unshakable people, capable of withstanding storms and celebrating victories with a heart full of gratitude. Pride is a subtle enemy that often hides in the heart, making us believe we are self-sufficient. The book of Proverbs warns that pride always precedes destruction. When a person places themselves above others or above God, they distance themselves from the source of true wisdom. Pride blinds the eyes, hardens the heart, and deafens the ears. To counsel, many empires and leaders fell because of this one root, arrogance. Humility, on the other hand, is exalted by God. To be humble does not mean to think less of oneself, but to recognize the greatness of God and the value of others. Humility is the soil where wisdom flourishes and grows. It allows us to learn, to correct ourselves, and to build healthier relationships. A humble heart is a heart ready to be led by God. Pride not only destroys individuals, but it also divides families, companies, and even nations. It creates an environment of competition instead of cooperation, of vanity instead of purpose. The prideful always want to be the center, and in doing so, they isolate themselves. When Proverbs teaches us to avoid pride, it is inviting us to preserve our lives from unnecessary destruction. To overcome pride, one needs self-awareness and the willingness to submit to God's authority. It is recognizing that all we have comes from Him. Our talents, our victories, and even our breath are divine gifts. Therefore, humility is not an option. It is the only safe way to live with wisdom. History shows us that the proud may shine for a while, but their fall is inevitable. However, the humble may not draw attention, but they build legacies that endure through time. That is why Solomon insists on this truth. Pride is dangerous, but humility is a shield. A humble person listens more than they speak, values more than they demand, and forgives more than they are offended. They understand that life is too short to be wasted on arrogance. Instead, they choose to live simply, honor others, and let God be glorified through their actions. Thus, the danger of pride serves as a warning and a reminder. A warning to those walking the path of arrogance and a reminder to those who seek to live in humility. Wisdom is not found at the top of the mountain of vanity, but in the valley of surrender to God. Wisdom is not given to the indifferent. It is reserved for those who search for it, as if looking for hidden treasure. Proverbs emphasizes that the true wealth of life is not found in material possessions, but in understanding and discernment. Those who passionately pursue wisdom discover a reward far greater than fleeting riches, peace, direction, and fulfillment in every area of life. Seeking wisdom is not a casual activity, but a daily commitment that transforms existence. Those who walk this path realize that wisdom does not merely provide knowledge, but illuminates choices. Every decision, from the simplest to the most complex, is guided by principles that prevent regrets and unnecessary pains. The reward of seeking wisdom is to live with clarity in a world full of confusion. Many invest in gold and silver, but few discover the eternal value of wisdom. The pursuit of wisdom also requires humility. Only those willing to admit their limitations can grow and receive instruction. Those who think they already know everything remain stuck in their own ignorance. However, the humble not only learn, but also become examples for others. Thus, the reward of wisdom extends beyond the individual. It influences families, communities, and generations. Proverbs highlights that the reward of wisdom is not just for the present, but eternal. While material achievements are consumed with time, the fruit of wisdom builds a legacy that endures. Those who live guided by it are remembered not for what they had, but for what they gave, taught, and inspired. In this lies the true wealth, that no thief can steal and no crisis can destroy. The secret of this reward lies in consistency. Seeking wisdom sporadically produces little fruit, but making it a lifestyle opens unimaginable doors. The wise plant today, knowing they will reap tomorrow, and their life becomes a testimony that reveals the goodness of God. The reward is not only what one gains, but what one becomes throughout the process. Those who persevere in the pursuit of wisdom also receive divine protection. Proverbs says that wisdom acts like a shield, guarding against dangers and traps. It is as if God himself accompanies the seeker, preventing him from falling into lies, deceit, and destructive paths. Thus, the reward is not just blessing, but preservation. Finally, the great reward of those who seek wisdom is intimacy with God. At the end of the journey, wisdom reveals not just strategies for life, but the very heart of the Creator. This connection is the highest prize, the source from which all other rewards flow. Whoever seeks wisdom sincerely ends up finding more than answers. They find the author of life. The book of Proverbs is not just an ancient script. It is a living voice that still speaks today. Its wisdom is as fresh as the morning and as solid as the mountains. Every principle you've just discovered is more than knowledge. It is power waiting to be applied in your daily walk. Wisdom is not passive. It demands action, the moment. You put these truths into practice, you'll begin to notice how your life shifts. Relationships improve, decisions become clearer, and peace settles into your heart. This is the beauty of divine wisdom. It works in the real world because it was crafted by the Creator of the world. Each lesson we explored is like a seed. If you let it sink deep into your heart and nurture it with practice, it will grow into a tree of life, producing fruit that blesses not only you, but everyone around you. This is the promise hidden in Proverbs, a life that shines with clarity, direction, and blessing. But remember, wisdom is not something you hear once and move on from. It is a daily choice. Just as you eat to nourish your body, you must feed your soul with truth. The more you return to these teachings, the stronger and more resilient you will become. The final call of Proverbs is this: live wisely, live intentionally, live close to God. In a world filled with confusion and noise, wisdom gives you focus and direction. It equips you to stand firm, to make a difference, and to leave a legacy that echoes beyond your own time. So don't let these lessons remain just words in your mind. Put them into action today. Start with one principle. Apply it and watch how your life begins to transform. Then take the next and the next. Soon you will realize that wisdom has not only changed your path, it has changed you. And this is the greatest gift Proverbs offers, the chance to become the kind of person who lives not by chance, but by divine design.